Hey, you lucky people. It's Just the Fact Friday with Larry and Peter. We're back again. And on this week's Just the Fact, we are talking about stripping miniatures. Now, okay, get your mind out of the gutter. We're not talking about like, we're talking about taking the paint off of previously painted miniatures because you bought them on eBay, you got them from a friend, you found them in the gutter. It's a topic that comes up a lot. Now, as a warning, imagine red flashing lights right here. Warning, 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 danger. Yeah, that dude.
Easy for you to say.
Yeah, right? Before you try any of the things that we talk about, you need to test them out on something that it doesn't matter if it gets ruined. You have to have a test marine because different companies make things out of different materials and some of them will react badly. Always test before you say screw it and just dunk it in. Now we are going to be talking about the main three materials: plastic, pewter, and resin. I'm not going to cover bones because honestly, bones is one of those really finicky materials to begin with. I mean, hell, you have to be really careful about what you use to prime it. Now, I will say a lot of the stuff that we talk about for plastic should be okay on bones, but once again, test it before you do it. If you ruin any of your miniatures, we are not responsible for it because we are telling you test it out. Test it out. These are only a guide. This isn't the Bible of stripping miniatures.
Yeah, Models Workshop is not responsible for you melting your plastic.
Exactly. Don't do it. Test it, test it, test it. Act like you're on Adam Savage's podcast. Test it. But okay, so now it's a really unique thing we have going on here because Peter's over in the UK, where I'm over in the US, and honestly, there's some products that we use to strip miniatures that Peter doesn't have over there, and there's some stuff that's over there that Peter has that we don't have over here. So, which one do you want to start with?
I think we should start with one of yours, Larry. We don't have it over here in the UK, but I believe it's green and it's quite simple to use.
Good old Simple Green. Simple Green is a go-to when it comes to stripping miniatures. Now, I will say I would not use this on bones because I accidentally dropped a paintbrush into a Simple Green vat that had a rubber O-ring left on it, and it dry rotted it. And so I can imagine that the vinyl plastic that they use is probably not going to work out best or all that great. Another word of warning: do not leave pewter models in Simple Green for extended periods of time. And I'm not talking overnight. I'm not talking about a week. I'm talking about months. I tossed some models into a vat of Simple Green, forgot about them, pulled them out, and it pock-marked the pewter. The plastic was fine, but the pewter had like little pock marks, like the Simple Green ate one of the minerals that was in the pewter out of it. So it was like all battle scarred, which you can use to your advantage if you want to, but it etched it pretty heavy. Simple Green, it's a household cleaner. You can find it at your typical stores such as Walmart or whatnot. You can get it in two different types. You can have it diluted and you can have it in a concentrate. The concentrate's kind of cool because you can get a large bottle of it. A bottle of it, and it goes a hell of a lot longer. And it's good on pewter as long as you don't soak it too hardcore. I've used it on pewter, I've used it on plastic, and I have used it on resin. Resin does get a little weird feeling. I don't know if it's more brittle or brittler, but it definitely has a different feel after you pull it out. To be fair, so does the plastic. But once you prime over it, rinse it off real good, and you have to rinse it off really, really good. Like soak it, rinse it, soak it, rinse it. But once you get that done and you prime it, you can't tell any difference unless you leave pewter in for like 4 months. Then you can tell. But it is one of the best, and it's actually really good for not good for the environment, but it's eco-safe. So that's an added bonus to it as well. And you don't have to have a special respirator. If you're going to use it a ton, wear gloves because it does have the risk, same risk as using Dawn soap. And the worst you have to worry about is you get dishpan hands from using them too often. Now, it's like super easy too. You mix it up. You can leave it a little more concentrate if you want. You dunk your miniatures in there. Wait a couple hours or a day, pull them out and use a soft bristle toothbrush to go over and scrub it. That'll get most of the paint off. You can repeat and rinse literally several times until you get most of the paint off. And so that's going to be probably the safest. So if you have kids or pets, that's probably going to be your best bet. And it doesn't do as good a job as some of the other ones we're going to talk about, but it is absolutely the safest.
So what we've got in the UK that's very similar to Simple Green is something called Dettol, which is an antiseptic cleaning fluid. You can use it for medical use, for cleaning cuts and scrapes, or you can use it diluted to wash the floor and disinfect. The way to use it is for stripping paint on minis is the same as Simple Green, but you use it neat, you don't mix it up. If you use it dilute, then it becomes gloopy and absolutely horrible. But leave it in overnight, then scrub it with a toothbrush and give it a couple of goes over, and it gets rid of it pretty much all the way through. And I've used it on plastic and metal.
Right, and at the end we'll talk about some of the instruments that you can use once we get past the chemical portion of this. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about is something that is available in both areas. I haven't used it a lot, but a lot of my friends have, and that is isopropyl alcohol, aka rubbing alcohol. You don't drink isopropyl alcohol, it'll kill you.
I've got a bottle of IPA in my studio, but what I have used is methylated spirits, which is, I guess, a very similar version of it. It's purple.
Right, it's the same concept. Now, things you have to watch out for is that it is flammable. Of course, it is rubbing alcohol. The purer you get, the better. If you can find yourself some 98 or 96%, it's going to strip miniatures more. The percentage is effectively how much water is in there versus how much alcohol. So 98, of course, is going to be almost completely pure alcohol. You do have to worry about the vapors. They do smell kind of funky, so you want to do it in a more, like, if you have a garage or an outdoor area that you can store these in, that would be perfect. Or if you have a window, you can set them up in the deal, you can. But like I said, it is extremely flammable. This is the stuff that they use in all of those alcohol lamps for chemistry and whatnot. I know for a fact that it works on plastic, and I know that it works on pewter. I don't recall my friend ever stripping any resin with it. So once again, if you want to try, you need to test it, because I don't know. I just know a lot of my friends do use it, and I've seen the how it goes, and it does work. The paint comes off pretty easy. That's another thing you need to keep in mind as well, is what you're stripping off. If you're stripping off water-based paint such as acrylic, then some chemicals are going to work better than others. Like if you're stripping off enamel, alcohol is going to be your best bet. If you're stripping off oil, honestly, just go grab yourself some white spirits, and that's going to knock it right off, because that's what that's what oils are thinned with, and you can reconstitute it with that as well. Now, the next one that I'm going to talk about is an old school method of stripping miniatures, and a lot of people don't use it anymore, and I don't blame them, because it makes your hands feel weird, and it does make your miniatures feel weird. But it's brake fluid.
Yes, I was going to say brake fluid. .4, right?
Yep, .4 brake fluid, the red stuff. And it's just like the rest of it. Now, as the added bonus, it is non-flammable, and it doesn't have really an odor to it, but it is toxic. So you have to be careful. And I know I've used it on plastic and pewter. I honestly would not recommend it for plastic. There's just better things to strip, because the plastic definitely has a weird feel after you try to strip them inside the brake fluid.
It gets really brittle, doesn't it?
Yes. And I believe I've done resin with it, but it was the same thing. It just felt brittle. It really felt brittle. Like the other one might have been it playing around with my, this kind of feels, no, with the brake fluid, it definitely feels more brittle. And plastic has a certain amount of give to it anyways, but it seems like that give kind of goes away whenever you use the brake fluid. So pewter figures, it's great on, because it does strip better than pretty much all the rest of the stuff we've talked about, but definitely wear gloves because it makes your hands feel really, really weird. And once again, you run into a lot of issues disposing of it. And honestly, I don't think it's really worth the headache.
It's not great for the environment, is it? Throwing away brake fluid with melted plastic all over it just down your drain. If you really want to check with, if you're going to dispose of it, if you're going to use .4, check with a mechanic and see how they dispose of it responsibly.
Exactly. Now, is there anything else that you've used to strip miniatures with?
Yeah, I've had some good results using Mr. Muscle spray oven cleaner.
I think we have the Mr. Muscle. I think we have Mr. Muscle, but we also have, what is it called? It's in a golden can, and it's this paint thinner / oven cleaner, strip clean or something like that, I think it's called. I don't remember, but you can go find it in the in the household section as either an oven cleaner, and you can also find aerosol based paint stripper as well. And I'm going to lump these two because they're effectively, the paint thinner is a little more harsh. So keep this in mind. Both of these chemicals are incredibly harsh. Paint stripper itself you can spray it on the side of a car and it'll eat through down to the bare metal. I mean, and I can tell you with a fact that the paint stripper is actually an acid. I accidentally grabbed something with my bare hands that I was using the paint stripper on, and it burned like crazy. And the oven cleaner is the same thing. It's highly toxic. I mean, incredibly toxic. The fumes on both of them are incredibly nasty. They are not safe to have around pets. They are not safe to have around kids. And I'll be truthful, I would only use them in the most dire of circumstances and only on pewter or other metal-based miniatures. Like if you have a steel miniature that you want to strip for some reason, you can, because there is actually die-cast steel, it's becoming popular, then yes, you can use these. If you attempt to use it on any other material such as plastic or resin, it will melt them. Without a doubt, it will melt them. And I'm talking in moments.
Really? Wow, that's pretty strong stuff. I mean, the Mr. Muscle I've had sitting on plastic overnight, and it's been fine. So it's probably not quite as harsh as the stuff you've got over there in the States.
Oh.
I mean, don't get me wrong. You want to wear a respirator and gloves. It's really bad for you. But it doesn't melt the plastic when you leave it overnight.
Well, I know the paint stripper would literally melt it. I mean, it burned my hand just by touching it. Okay, now there is one, if you're needing to strip metal miniatures, I think probably the safest and easiest thing that you can use that is readily available, not as toxic as a lot of stuff. It does have a bit of a fume and a smell to it, but it's simple acetone.
Oh yeah, good old nail polish remover.
Exactly. The stuff that your wife probably has laying around. What you do is you just go, hey, honey, or if you're a female painter that you probably have laying around, just go buy a larger jug of it so they have something or you have something to strip off the paint off of your nails. It's also handy to have around if you airbrush and you forget to put your glove on, just saying. And also you have some that you can toss in like a quart jar to dip your metal miniatures in. Once again, do not use it on plastic. It will melt them. There's actually a couple cool videos of a dude dissolving a Rubik's Cube in acetone. And also resin is in the same boat. Don't use it on resin, but it is amazing. It's probably the best to use for your pewter miniatures or your steel miniatures because the paint comes right off. It's good for enamels. It's good for all that other stuff. Now, the one thing you have to be really careful about is you cannot use a toothbrush on it, and that goes with the oven cleaner. I mean, like anything that's super harsh that we talked about melting plastic, don't use a toothbrush on it because you're going to end up leaving half the bristles on the miniature. It kind of defeats the purpose. And if you're going to, make sure to rinse it off really well first and then brush it and pull all the paint off. Professional Lego builders actually use acetone. They coat the bricks in them, and it melts the bricks together. That should give you a clue of what it does to your miniatures. And it will literally, you'll have whiskers. You'll have whiskers on your miniatures.
You don't want whiskers on your miniatures. One last chemical to talk about is something called BioStrip 20.
Oh, yes, I've heard about that stuff too.
It looks really good. Ian, who's going to be doing the podcast in the UK with us, he put me onto this. And from the photos he's shown me, you basically just brush it on, leave it overnight, wash it off, do it a couple more times, and you have a perfectly clean Mini. It just melts it all off. Plastic, resin, metal, whatever.
Ooh, now is that available? Is that available in the US or is that UK only?
It looks like it's UK only. On Amazon, it's about £10, but I'm sure if you get it on eBay, you can get it shipped worldwide.
Right. All right, so now let's do a quick wrap up. Now, honestly, my recommendation, if you're going to go for resin or plastic, I think Simple Green is honestly your best bet. Alcohol, if for some reason you have something that's super hardcore that you can't get, that the Simple Green doesn't work. And if you're going to go with pewter, honestly, acetone is going to be your best bet and the safest. What recommendations would you make?
Pretty much the same as you, actually. Acetone for metal, nice and easy. Dunk it, strip it. BioStrip 20 for pretty much everything else. And if you can't get hold of BioStrip, then just go down to your local supermarket and pick up some Dettol and have fun disinfecting all your models.
All right. So now the next thing is the tools that we utilize while cleaning. I think your number one tool is a toothbrush.
Yeah, but don't go and get a really expensive flexi-headed toothbrush. Just a nice, cheap, soft one will do.
The next up, you're going to want a nice assortment of toothpicks or wooden sticks that have like a nice sharp point, and you're going to need a big box of them. So don't buy something that's super expensive where you only get one or two. You want something where you have several hundred of them in a single box. Now, if you're super careful with it, you can also use wire brushes such as brass. Stay away from steel. You either want like aluminum bristles or you want brass bristles, because that's going to... those metals are soft enough where as long as you're not gouging down into it, you shouldn't damage the miniature if you are gentle. Now, speaking of dental, not mental, dental picks and dental tools or really sharp tweezers are also really great for getting into those crevices and those cracks and pulling the paint out. Once again, folks, if you're hearing some background noise, I am recording this episode also in the Ashtabula Mall in Ashtabula, Ohio, so there's going to be a little bit of background noise going on. But I think that we're going to wrap up this episode. What are your closing thoughts on this one, Peter?
We've all got models that we're not happy with, stuff we did when we were younger that we want to redo, strip them back and respray them and get them nice and new and modern again. And same goes for rubbish you bought on eBay.
And if you have any questions about this, you can head over to facebook.com/The Models Workshop. We also have a discussion group. Feel free to post up the stuff you're painting or any questions that you may have, and we'll get to you. If you want to watch some cool videos, you can head over to youtube.com/Models Workshop. You can also find myself on Twitter at MWAH Podcast, and you can find Peter at
Mini Model Paint.
So we're available when we're awake, but you can tweet at us, show models that you have off to us, ask us questions. We're available there. So, and once again, this episode is brought to you by Audible. When we're not painting or talking on podcasts or listening to a movie, audiobooks are the way that I go. And I'm not kidding, folks. I have a collection of well over 300 audiobooks on Audible. Ask me, I'll screenshot it and I will show you. I love Audible. I think their service is great. And right now, using our promotional code, you get not one but 2 free books. Now, if you don't want to have the commitment of paying an audiobook for an audiobook every month, it's too easy. Get the 2 free books, cancel it. Helps out the website and gets you a couple real good books. Currently, I'm listening to Dune, which is an interesting book, I'm not going to lie. It definitely took a little bit to get into it, but I'm listening to like the performance version where they have like full cast of actors and everything else. That book is really amazing. Also, another book that I'm getting ready to listen to again is Stephen King's It, which is a nice long listen, and it's just absolutely amazing. One of King's best books, one of my favorites.
Yeah, I've just downloaded that on Audible as well. Looking forward to getting stuck into that.
Now, is this your first listen to it?
Yeah, I never got a chance to read the book.
Ooh.
I've seen the movie and the TV series, but never read the book.
The newest movie is truer to the book, but the book is just so... Like, both of them were good. Don't get me wrong. They were both great, but the book is so much better. And you can get that one for free, and it's like 40-something hours long for free, and it's like a $50 book. Free. Yeah, if you don't want to continue on, but if you do, you can get them as cheap as, like, I think $13 a month. That's one audiobook a month for that price. But anyways, folks, thank you for listening to Models Workshop. Just the Facts, your Friday little tidbit of information and frequently asked questions within the painting community. Talk to you next time.